Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday online program. Like previous weeks, we have very special guest joining us today. I'd like to welcome His Grace Partha Prabhu. I hope he has joined already. Are you all, Prabhu? Thank you. So, without taking too much time, I request Yashika to introduce our guest speaker to our Sangha. And after the talk, there'll be opportunity for a few, feedback, question and answer, etc. Please, you will know more about him when Yashika introduces him to you. So you may think about it, and then maybe you can also ask something related to what Prabhuji has been involved for many, many years, a special mission within the mission of ISKCON. All right, so please listen to him, and you may have some questions also. After the talk, we will have a short kirtan, and then that will conclude our program for the evening. Hare Krishna, Yashika, you please introduce our guest now.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Once again, welcome to our Sunday Feast program. We have a very special guest, His Grace Partha Prabhuji from Vancouver. Prabhuji married Uttam Devi Dasi Mataji in the last term of high school in 1971, and after they graduated, both of them left on a spiritual quest, which ultimately led them to taking initiation from Srila Prabhupada in 1973. Then, after Prabhuji's second initiation, he became the head pujari for Sri Sri Radha Madan Mohan in Vancouver for about 20 years, and he's been a former board member as well as trustee of ISKCON Vancouver. Prabhuji's also been involved with the Grihastha Vision team since 2004, both him and his wife having facilitated seminars in over almost 21 countries. Prabhu is also licensed to perform legal marriages by the province of British Columbia, which he does so after counseling the couples. He is also certified by the Dazi Ziyad Family Institute to administer their program called Vaishnav 108 Inventory and Premarital and Marriage Spiritual Strengths Program. And this is administered along with many other skill building courses, which are administered by other marital therapists, including a level 1 Gottman clinical couples therapy. And additionally, Prabhuji has a beautiful family with his wife, 3 children, and 6 grandchildren. So once again, I'd like to welcome His Grace Parthadas Prabhuji and hand it over to him. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So I was asked to speak today about the relevance of Bhagavad Gita. So I'll just begin with the invocation and then we'll read one verse. Om Gyanatimarandasya Jananjanan Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Sta Pitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvahutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sinho Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishware Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhibhya Evacha Patatanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So tonight I'd like to read something from the 14th chapter, which is a very important chapter and very, very relevant to everyone in all circumstances. So I'd like to begin by reading the 10th verse, and then I'll just like to go back to the first verse, and then we can discuss the chapter. So text 10, Rajas tamas chati bhuya sattvam bhavati bharata. Rajas sattvam tamas chaiva tamas sattvam rajastata. Raja, mode of passion. Tama, mode of ignorance. Cha, also. Abhibhuya, also surpassing. Sattvam, mode of goodness. Bhavati, becomes prominent. Bharata, O son of Bharata. Raja, mode of passion. Sattvam, mode of goodness. Tama, mode of ignorance. Cha, also. Eva, like. Tat, that. Tama, mode of ignorance. Sattvam, mode of goodness. Raja, mode of passion. Tata, in this life. Srila Prabhupada's translation and purport. Sometimes the mode of passion becomes prominent, defeating the mode of goodness, O son of Bharata. And sometimes the mode of goodness defeats passion, and at other times the mode of ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. Purport. When the mode of passion is prominent, the modes of goodness and ignorance are defeated. When the mode of goodness is prominent, passion and ignorance are defeated. And when the mode of ignorance is prominent, passion and goodness are defeated. This competition is always going on. Therefore, one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness has to transcend these modes. The prominence of some certain mode of nature is manifest in one's dealings, in his activities, in eating, etc. All this will be explained in later chapters. But if one wants, he can develop by practice the mode of goodness and thus defeat the modes of ignorance and passion. One can similarly develop the mode of passion and defeat the modes of goodness and ignorance, or one can develop the mode of ignorance and defeat goodness and passion. Although there are these modes of material nature, if one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness. And by transcending the mode of goodness, he can be situated in pure goodness, which is called the Vasudeva state, a state in which one can understand the science of God. By the manifestation of particular activities, it can be understood in what mode of nature one is situated. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Sunyavadi Pashta Jadesha Tarane Omagana Timarandasha Jananjanan Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Giram Yat Kriptam Ham Vande Shigurum Dinataranam. So again, I would just like to go to the first verse of this chapter, which really emphasizes the importance and relevance of this chapter. So text 1, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuya Pravakshami Gyananam Gyanam Uttamam Yaj Gyatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhim Itogata. The Blessed Lord said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained to supreme perfection." And Srila Prabhupada describes in this purport, the knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transfer to the spiritual world. Now the Lord explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far, far superior to all other processes of knowledge thus far explained. And knowing this, many attain perfection. Thus, it is expected that one who understands this 14th chapter will attain perfection. And in the next verse, Krishna says, by becoming fixed in this knowledge, which he's describing in the 14th chapter, one can attain to the transcendental nature, which is like my own nature. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation, nor disturbed at the time of devastation. So it's very interesting in the evolution of the Krishna consciousness movement. Sometimes in the early 1970s, I believe it was 1971, on at least 3 occasions, Prabhupada mentioned in lectures and in letters, kind of unusual statement, especially when considered right now, this is a time of the Christmas marathon, and there's a great emphasis on distributing books. And ultimately, we're distributing books to bring Krishna consciousness to others and make others into devotees. But in the early 1970s, on several occasions, Prabhupada, he made this point that he said, we have enough devotees. He said, now we need to train the devotees to become fully Krishna conscious. And he also said something interesting. He said, if we simply make devotees, but if we don't actually teach them to imbibe Krishna consciousness, what Prabhupada said, that will be like adding water to milk. And Prabhupada explained, if you have a jug of milk, and if you keep pouring water in the milk is going to become very thinned out. And he said, eventually you will not recognize the milk from water. It'll become so diluted. So Prabhupada was emphasizing the necessity of us to really become Krishna conscious, to learn to live and breathe the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Not that he wanted to minimize a preaching or book distribution or making devotees, but he made these statements to emphasize the point of becoming and developing Krishna consciousness. And so in the verse which I read, the 10th verse, Krishna is describing how the modes of material nature are competing for supremacy. And Prabhupada said, by the nature of this material world, this is always going to take place, that the modes are going to try and predominate in our lives. And it's interesting, in the instructions of Lord Kapila Dev to his mother, he's also discussing the influence and the impact of the modes of material nature. And there's one verse which always stuck out in my mind, especially because I was a Pujari for many, many years. Prabhupada was describing, the verse actually describes, the Lord says, if one worships me in the form of the deity, so one can be worshiping Krishna, and it describes if one worships me, but he is envious of others, he does not please me by his service. And so the purpose describes how that's a devotional service in the mode of ignorance, that we're actually directly serving the Supreme Lord, but at the same time, if we have an inimical attitude towards others, especially other devotees, Krishna is not even accepting that service. So if you were to categorize that in terms of the modes of material nature, that kind of service would be like unalloyed mode of ignorance, devotional service. So even within the realm of devotional service, we can be influenced by the modes of material nature. Although on the highest platform, because at least we're engaging in devotional service, even I'm a Pujari, even if I have such a envious attitude toward others, just the fact that I'm engaging in devotional service, I'll gradually make advancement. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj, he says, even though one may chant with offense, but still he should keep on chanting. Not that you're chanting with offense, you should quit chanting, but he said you should continue chanting, because by continuing to chant, gradually the offenses will be minimized. So, as stated, the process of devotional service, if one engages in devotional service, he automatically acquires all the qualities of the demigods. So, that automatic doesn't mean we have to do work. It doesn't mean we have to make some endeavor. Just like we completed the month of Damodar. And it's described how Mother Yasoda, she's endeavoring to tie Krishna, and somehow the ropes were always 2 fingers too short. And those 2 fingers represented 2 things. One was the sincere, devoted endeavor of the devotee, and the other was the Lord's mercy. So by devotion, by that effort of devotion, we can actually get the mercy of Krishna and actually become empowered in many ways, even beyond our abilities and expectations. And so that's especially true even in the realm of trying to make a spiritual advancement and trying to apply the process of Krishna consciousness. So again, we're not just reading Bhagavad Gita for the sake of reading. I'm not just trying to read page after page after page just so I can say I read the entire Bhagavad Gita. We're actually reading Bhagavad Gita 1 page at a time to try to understand how I can apply this knowledge to my life in a very practical way that will improve my devotion to Krishna, my service to Krishna, and my service to Krishna's devotees. And again, we have to make that concerted, sincere effort. And the pastime of Damodar illustrates that if you make that concerted effort, that he is the, he's not subordinate to anyone. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But it's described that Krishna, he becomes subordinate to the extraordinary devotion and love of his devotees. So if we sincerely try to develop these spiritual qualities and understand what they are, what they look like, then Krishna, he can actually help us to develop those qualities. So in the verse we read, it's interesting how Prabhupada said that if one wants, he can develop by practice the mode of goodness and thus defeat the modes of ignorance and passion. And he also mentions you can practice the mode of ignorance and you can practice the mode of passion and lose touch with goodness. So Prabhupada is saying we should try to practice this mode of goodness. We need to understand and see what that looks like and how it manifests in our life. Sometimes I like to give the example to devotees. I don't know, can people make comments in the chat box here? Is that possible? I'm just going to make an experiment here. So if you were to chant in the mode of ignorance, what would that look like? If you were to chant japa in the mode of ignorance, what would that look like? Is anyone available to write in the chat box what japa in the mode of ignorance would look like? Watching TV. Yeah. Or on your cell phone, falling asleep. Yeah, so that's definitely japa in the mode of ignorance. Now, what would japa in the mode of passion look like? Can anyone just give some suggestions? Japa in the mode of passion. Thinking, let me finish, yeah. Driving, yeah. Running. On the corner. Don't know what you mean by on the corner. I know for myself, japa in the mode of passion is usually I'm thinking about what I have to do during the rest of the day, thinking about my to-do list. It's not really quite focused. So what would japa in the mode of goodness look like? Can someone say? Focus with love, yes. Trying to hear. Focus on rounds early in the morning. Yeah. Trying to really focus with love and really trying to hear, trying to connect on Krishna. So I'm sure we've all experienced the three different modes of chanting japa. And just consider for a minute, what does it feel? What is the feeling to chant in the mode of ignorance? It's not very pleasurable. And in the mode of passion, like someone said, you're just trying to get it done. Or you're thinking about other things. So it's not very pleasurable. But when you chant in the mode of goodness with attention and focus and love, it becomes very rewarding. You don't know where the time went. All of a sudden, your rounds are finished and you wonder where the time went. It's very satisfying. So it's a very practical thing. You can experience how these different modes have an effect on even our devotional activities. So we can also question you, do we have a choice in which mode of material nature we want to chant japa in? Do we have a choice? Can someone answer that question for me? Do we have a choice in which mode of material nature we are going to chant our japa? Yes or no? Yes and no. Well, I would say yes, we definitely have a choice. And I think no, if we realize we don't have a choice. And sometimes it's no because we become conditioned to maybe japa in the mode of passion or japa in the mode of ignorance. It becomes a conditioning. But we do have that conscious choice to make that decision. And so my next question would be, is it always easy? Is it always easy to come to the mode of goodness? Yes or no? Is it easy? Someone says it's hard to stick to our choice. And yes, based on the desire. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that param drisva nivartate, that how one can get a higher taste. And so even with our japa, if we can focus on what is the taste in the mode of ignorance for japa, what's the taste in the mode of passion, and what's in the taste for mode of goodness, and which taste do we want to experience? And even from that perspective, it can become much easier to move towards the mode of goodness and pure goodness in our chanting, to see that the spiritual platform is the param drisva nivartate. And similarly in the activities of our life, actually in the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, Krishna, he gives a more elaboration on the modes of material nature and what they look like in terms of knowledge, action, work, understanding, determination. All these things are affected by the modes of material nature. And especially in terms of determination, as someone was saying, it's, how it can be difficult to come to the mode of goodness, but as someone said, it depends on our desire and our determination. And it's very interesting that one time Prabhupada, he said, he was talking about steadiness. How do we become steady? So we're trying to understand how to become steady in Krishna consciousness, in at least goodness, and move to pure goodness. So how can we come to that platform of steadiness? And Srila Prabhupada described that steadiness means determination to make advancement. When we become determined, we become steady. And then in a few paragraphs later, Prabhupada defined steadiness as not being frustrated or agitated by any obstacle or difficulty that comes before one. And as soon as I read that, I remember reading that the first time I ever came across that purport, and I realized I was not determined. I had no determination at all, because real determination means if there's some obstacle, you're going to just keep on trying. And Prabhupada gave that example of the sparrow who's trying to dry up the ocean with its little beak. But because that sparrow was so determined to dry the ocean to retrieve its eggs, it's described that Garuda saw the plight of that little bird and said to the ocean, if you don't return those eggs, I will take up the plight of this bird and dry you up. So the ocean immediately returned the eggs. So in the same way, by our determined, devoted effort to come to those higher platforms of consciousness, goodness towards pure goodness in all our activities, we can actually make rapid advancement in Krishna consciousness according to our determined desire. And so again, it's the two fingers, the sincere, devoted determination and the mercy of Krishna. And life is actually an opportunity to practice those kinds of determinations. As Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita, yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat jahosi dadasi yat. Yat tapasya kuntaya tat gurushva madarpanam. He says, all you do, all you eat, all you give away in charity, he says, everything do as an offering to me. So Krishna is saying all, and all is a pretty inclusive word. It doesn't really exclude anything, any activity. So whatever we are doing, somehow we have to dovetail that with Krishna's service in the best possible way. And I know one example I like to give, and I think we all experience that in our lives, that when you're in the temple, the church, or the mosque, we tend to be very respectful and kind to everyone who's there. And we treat them in a very sattvic, mode of goodness way. But sometimes we experience, when we leave the temple, go to our homes, our ashrams, and close the door, whether it's Grihastha ashram or Brahmachari ashram or Brahmacharya ashram, sometimes when those doors are closed, sometimes we behave in ways which maybe aren't so respectful. Sometimes maybe we say things that are a little impolite or a little cruel or a little unconstructive. So somehow at times we exhibit this disconnect between our behavior when we're in the temple and when we're outside the temple. And that's to be expected because we're in the process of sadhana bhakti. We're trying to come to that mode of goodness. But we can see sometimes there's this very pronounced difference when we're focused on the temple atmosphere. We have one standard of behavior, and we're out of the temple. Sometimes our behavior kind of bottoms out, goes to the lowest common denominator, which is not always the best. But Krishna consciousness means actually to see Krishna everywhere. And Krishna is everywhere. And I'm sure everyone who is here has a little picture of Krishna in their home. And those pictures of Krishna, they're actually non-different than Krishna. I was watching the Artik, and you're very beautiful girl in the tie, and I was trying to take a close look at your picture of Panchatattva. And I had a very nice, it was actually a photograph of Panchatattva that was taken by someone in 1970, I think it was 74, 75. There was a painting of Panchatattva on the perimeter wall of the Mayapur complex. A very, very beautiful, very large painting on the brick wall. And someone took a photograph, gave me the negative, and I made a print of that, and I was going to put it on the altar in the Vancouver temple. So I had a print made 8 by 10 inches, and I went to a framing shop. Actually, it was not Woodward's. I think it was the Eaton store or something, downtown Vancouver. Got on the bus, went all the way downtown, took it to this picture framing shop, and I had a nice gold frame picked out. And the lady said, it'll be ready in 2 weeks. We'll give you a phone call when it's ready. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. And so I get on the bus, I go all the way downtown to pick this up, go to the desk, and I tell the lady that, I received the phone call and I came to pick the picture up. So she went in the back and she's looking for the picture, and she comes out a few minutes later and said, well, I can't find it. And I said, well, I got the phone call saying it was ready. And so she went in the back again and looked, and 5 minutes later she came out a little embarrassed and a little frustrated, and she said, well, I can't find it. Let me call the person who actually did the work to frame the picture, because he's not here today. So she got on the phone, she calls him up, she hangs up the phone, and she goes in the back. So this was an 8x10 picture, which would have had a frame of maybe 2 inches wide. So it should have been maybe like, I don't know, 16x20, the maximum size. And she came out with this parcel that was huge, like it was literally like, that big and this thick, I swear. And I said, that can't be the picture. I said, it was only like, an 8x10 photograph. And he said, that's the one. And I said, well, we better open up because I don't want to go all the way back on the bus and find this the wrong picture. So she starts unpacking it, and there's like cardboard and foam rubber. And inside, there's my little picture of Panchatattva. And this lady, she told me, she said, I've been working here for 20 years and I have never, ever seen this man wrap something so carefully. I said, I've never seen this. And she said to me that he told me he realized this picture was something very valuable and very sacred. And he went to all that trouble. So somehow, here's some quote unquote non-devotee, he's doing some little seva, framing this picture, and somehow Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, Panchatattva, inspired this man to see that this was no ordinary picture. This is something extremely sacred and valuable. So that's true of any picture of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, pictures of our acharyas. They're all extremely potent, and we can have those in our homes, and that's our atmosphere. And for us, thinking in terms of that experience and how Krishna is actually in your home, and if he's not there, you can have him in your home very easily, just simply with a small picture. And realizing that Krishna is in your home in terms of your behavior with those of your family, your friends, or even brahmacharya ashram, realizing that Krishna is also in your ashram, that's going to help you behave in the mode of goodness, because Krishna's there watching. He's in their heart, he's in your heart, he knows exactly what's going on. Automatically, you're going to behave in the mode of goodness. But at the same time, as someone said, is it easy? Yes and no. It's easy if we realize that. It's difficult if we don't realize that. And that's hard to realize, that Krishna is in his picture. So it's Krishna consciousness. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. So one edge of the sword is if you realize Krishna's there, automatically you're going to behave in the mode of goodness and pure goodness. And at the same time, by practicing the mode of goodness, by endeavoring to, I may not understand that my wife or my friend is a part and parcel of Krishna, and I may be frustrated or agitated at him, but rather than lash out and say something cruel, I can think, okay, somehow Krishna, please help me say something respectful and kind in this situation. And by practicing that mode of goodness, that will actually help us to realize that Krishna is actually in our life. He is in those pictures. So that's a very, very important part of what Bhagavad Gita is trying to teach, how to integrate Krishna consciousness into every aspect of your life. And especially this chapter, as is extremely important in understanding how the modes of material nature are working and how they're influencing us, and how we can extricate ourselves from that influence and try to come to the mode of goodness. And again, it's not easy. It's not easy. The Mataji was introducing us, and she was describing how we do a lot of work with Grihastha community, helping Grihasthas to have peaceful, stable marriages, happy marriages. And the Grihastha ashram actually affords immense opportunities to make spiritual advancement. Because to be successful and peaceful and stable and happy in the Grihastha ashram, you have to develop kindness, compassion, forgiveness, patience. And those are the qualities you need for pure devotional service. So being in the Grihastha ashram gives you the opportunity to practice those qualities. Sometimes we as devotees think, well, Krishna says that one who engages in devotional service will develop all the good qualities of demigods. And we think that just, well, Krishna is just going to magically turn some switch, and all of a sudden I'm just going to be more tolerant than a tree and patient. And believe me, it doesn't happen that way. Krishna is going to give you opportunity to become patient. One of my god sisters, she was on Navadvip Mandal Parikrama one year. And she was telling us how everywhere she went, every temple and every samadhi, she was praying that, please help me become patient and tolerant. Please help me become patient and tolerant. And then she said shortly after that, in her Parikram party, they were traveling small groups who would travel together and stay in the same tent. So she was with this group of ladies. And right after she started making that prayer, she said, one individual, late Mataji, joined her party, and she said she had never met anyone who was so annoying and had never felt so frustrated with anyone in her whole life. and so my god sister said she was thinking, like, Krishna, why are you doing this to me? It's like, I'm here in the holy Dham. I'm trying to make an advancement. Why are you doing this to me? And then she said she realized, oh my God, I was praying for this. I was praying to become humble and tolerant and patient. And Krishna is giving me the opportunity to become humble and tolerant and patient. And so again, in our lives, Krishna, he gives us those opportunities, and those are opportunities for advancement. And therefore, devotee, he never blames, why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this. Why are you doing this to me? But rather thinks that somehow Krishna has arranged this situation to help me develop these godly qualities. And again, in Grihastha Ashram, we have these immense opportunities to learn how to treat each other with respect and devotion and compassion and kindness. And as Prabhupada said, it can be done by practice. Just like a small example, I wish I could see you, would ask you, how many people here had ever complained in their life? Complain about something. Usually everyone in the crowd, the hand goes up. Everyone admits they've always complained about something. And has everyone ever complained to you? Everyone's been on the brunt end of a complaint. But then I would ask everyone just to think for a minute, what if you received a compassionate request instead of a complaint? Like, I might complain that, well, every single time you're late for class. And it makes me so angry. So if I said that, you'd probably never want to come to class again. So it's not very pleasurable to be on the blunt receiving end of a complaint. But if I said something in a little more compassionate way that well, when I see you coming late to class, it concerns me, because there's a lot of important information that can be presented in the beginning of the class, which if you miss, you might not be able to understand the context of the whole lecture. So which would be easier to receive, the brunt complaint or a more compassionate, thoughtful request? And so again, in our lives, we can do that. In those moments where we are feeling ourselves on the verge of complaining, we can simply frame it as a request. And as many things like that we can do in our lives, whatever ashram we're in, to improve our social interactions with the Vaishnavas. And that's very, very important. The Sri Ishupanishad describes that, how one who sees the Supreme Lord everywhere and within everything, he never hates anything nor any living being. And there's a similar verse which follows that says that one who has that vision, he's never subjected to illusion or anxiety, because he sees Krishna's arranging everything and everyone's Krishna's part and parcel. So that is what we are trying to develop through the process of Krishna consciousness, through this practice. And so there's very practical ways we can practice Krishna consciousness. And so that is actually what we do with this Grihastha vision team. We teach couples how to live the mode of goodness in their relationships, how to practice kindness and compassion through communication and behavior, and um, to realize that their ashram is not something different than the Krishna consciousness. That your ashram is, every individual ashram is a very important element in the movement of Srila Prabhupada's mission, extremely important. And the health of your ashram is very crucial. And I can maybe end with one story to show the importance of healthy families. And in the 1970s, after the devotees had first gone to, actually Prabhupada first went to Moscow, and some books were smuggled in, and after that more books began to be smuggled into the Soviet Union, and the Soviet government actually perceived that one of the three biggest threats to communism, I think they said it was Western dress, Western music, and Hare Krishna. They considered that the three biggest threats to the Soviet Union. One of them was Hare Krishna, and they were actually persecuting the devotees very greatly. So during that era in Vancouver, we used to do a Sunday program at a huge park, which was thousands of tourists would go there. We would sit on a big, huge, colorful blanket and chant, and someone would cook pakors and distribute them. And we do kirtan, and while we're doing kirtan, a lot of the children would just be dancing all day in front of the devotees, the small, like 3 to 5 year olds, just maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 kids. And so one Sunday, I went up to this lady to try to sell her a Bhagavad Gita, and she was like this, and she went, like, she just wanted nothing to do with me, so I just backed off and let her alone. 10 minutes later, I see this lady, and she's calling me over, and she told me, she said, I'm from the Soviet Union, and I believe she worked at the embassy in Vancouver, and she said, I was told you people were a dangerous cult. And then she said, but I can see that how these children are so spontaneous and so happy. I said, there's something very real here. She said, I want to buy your book. So I sold her Bhagavad Gita. And she told me that I'm going to take this back to Russia and tell all my friends about this. So that selling that book didn't come from me. It came from some happy children who were brought up in some loving, caring atmosphere. And this lady, seeing those children happy, it changed her heart about the Hare Krishna movement. So you have no idea how people are being influenced by the Krishna consciousness movement in different ways. And so just by grihastas, even living peaceful, happy life, others will see you and they'll become inquisitive about what, is this Krishna consciousness, and they can become inspired to understand more. So again, Bhagavad Gita is extremely relevant to all of us in ways that sometimes we can't even imagine, very deep, significant ways. And it's very important when we read Bhagavad Gita to try to think, well, what can I take away from what I've read to apply in my life? How can I somehow integrate this into my life so that the knowledge of Krishna consciousness becomes not just something intellectual. I've memorized some verses, or I philosophically understand something intellectually, but rather that we understand it intellectually and philosophically, but we also live and breathe that philosophy in our life. That's very important. And that's how Bhagavad Gita is extremely relevant to us in the most profound way. And this 13th chapter is a very important chapter in helping us to understand that in terms of becoming perceptive to how we are influenced by the modes of material nature and how we can extricate ourselves to a higher level of consciousness and behavior, so our lives will become more happy and successful, and will make those around us also more happy and successful, and will also have more impact on the world when we can fully imbibe Krishna consciousness. So I'm going to end there, and if anyone has any questions or comments, we can take a few questions. I guess you can either put them in the chat box, or I don't know if they can unmute and ask your questions. I don't know what's the format you have here.
Yeah, we can use both, Prabhu. First of all, thank you for very nicely elaborating on the importance of chapter 14. And I'm not 100% clear about this particular thing about overcoming the modes of material nature.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna actually says that it's very difficult to overcome unless you surrender to me.
Mm-hmm.
And because by my grace, you can overcome. Right?
Sorry, say it again. One, he said it's very difficult to overcome the modes of nature.
Yeah. So those who are surrendered unto me,
Mm-hmm.
by my grace, they will, get over the modes of material nature.
Yes, yes.
So therefore, it requires surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So
now,
that,
of course,
mm-hmm.
As I'm talking to you, it occurs to me also, one aspect of surrender is actually living according to the instruction of Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
So actually surrender is a continuous process, isn't it?
Yes,
It doesn't
moment to moment.
Moment to moment.
Sometimes there may be very big surrenders where we have to take shelter of Krishna. Actually, Prabhupada once said, for every devotee, there'll be one major test, one big test, like Prahlad Maharaj, that huge test. But he said for every devotee, there'll be one big test. But actually in our lives, from moment to moment, there's opportunities for us to depend on Krishna. And the more we can realize that, well, I have to depend on Krishna wherever I am and whatever activity, to realize that if I can realize my connection with Krishna, my dependence on Krishna in whatever it is I'm doing, I will excel. I will excel. And it's very important to remember that is a very important a constant dynamic. Like Krishna speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and then he says, Sarvadhamam Prijaj, just surrender to me, I'll protect you, don't worry. And then Krishna says, well, Arjuna, I've explained everything to you, now do as you wish to do. It gives Arjuna that freedom. I explained everything, Krishna says, now do as you wish to do. And I was in Hungary last year, and we were talking with some brahmacharis about this verse, and it was really interesting. There was a new bhakta had a very good realization about this. We asked him, well, what does that verse mean to you? That, Krishna, he's saying surrender, but then he's saying do what you want to do. And he said, it makes me feel like Krishna trusts me because he's giving me that choice. And then we asked, well, how does that make you feel? Krishna trusts you. And he said, he thought for a minute, and then he said, the boy said, it's brand new bhakti. He said, I think that makes it easier to surrender to Krishna, that he you feel confident that Krishna trusts you with your independence. And so that gives you that kind of free choice that I'm going to surrender to Krishna. And because you can imagine from Krishna's position, I was thinking about that once. It's just, he's Krishna saying surrender. And it's like for any of you who are parents of teenagers, late teens, when they get their driver's license, and one day your son or daughter comes and says, hey, Dad, can I have the key for the cars? And first time they come and ask that. Anyone ever experienced that?
Sure.
It's kind of like that. Krishna's saying, okay, here's the keys to the car. You might smash it, I don't know, but here it goes. You can. Krishna has some trust. So we have some trust in our kids that we give them the keys to the car. So Krishna's like that. He's giving us the keys to the car. And in our life, it's very important to realize that, as I was mentioning, how there's these two fingers to get the mercy of Krishna, that it's by our endeavor and Krishna's mercy. So if we can see that, like our goal isn't to be perfect. Our goal is to excel in everything we do. And so we should always try to excel in whether book distribution or cooking or dressing the deities or cleaning the temple. It's not that we're trying to become perfect, because there is no such thing as perfection. But what there is an excellence of service that we're doing with love and devotion to the best of our ability. And when we can develop that attitude of doing everything to the best of our ability, realizing we're dependent on Krishna actually to do that. Mother Yasoda, she could only bind Krishna by his mercy. He had to give her the mercy to be able to bind him. So in the same way, everything we do in our life, we can realize we're dependent upon Krishna ultimately to please Krishna. So that's, I would call that there's major surrenders, minor surrenders in our lives. And there's also like they have these things now called nanoparticles,
Yes.
super microscopic. And in our lives also, there's microscopic moments where if we stop, we can realize that, okay, Krishna, how can I do this to the best of my ability for your pleasure? Microsecond. And actually all our activities, Krishna says that everything you do depend upon me, work under my protection. So again, it's that awareness and a constant practice.
Thank you very much. It's very, very, enlightening to hear the process of surrender actually how it happens. Thank you.
An interesting question just popped up. How does the Gottman counseling approach and Krishna consciousness work together? Compatibilities, similarities, divergences, etc. We actually have studied a lot of very research-based theories in science on what makes a marriage work. And so we use some techniques and skills from the secular world to help devotees understand what the mode of goodness looks like, because sometimes we're actually so close to it, we can't see it. And so Prabhupada gives this simple example of how in a healthy marriage, Prabhupada said sometimes, like in India, if you've been in Mayapur, sometimes there's a huge boom, a big bolt of lightning and a big boom of thunder. And Prabhupada said, and then there's no rain, it doesn't rain. And Prabhupada said, similarly, sometimes husband and wife, they may have some argument, and the next minute it's gone, it's forgotten. So that's a healthy marriage. And that's actually was by 40 years of research at this Gottman Institute. They concluded that happily married couples who learn to treat each other with respect and kindness and compassion, even though they have conflicts, and even though sometimes some couples might be argumentative, it might appear to external eyes that they're a little volatile when verbally volatile. They might be loud when they're having their challenges or arguments, but they do it with respect. There's no demeaning, there's no name calling, there's no put downs. And 40 years of research showed that couples, even though they argue, they can have very happy marriages because they know how to repair the mistakes they make, and they exhibit humility and passion and kindness, which are the Vaishnava qualities. So the secular world, such as this Gottman research, it actually reinforces what we should understand from the simple statements of Srila Prabhupada, but sometimes we're so close to them, we can't see the forest for the trees. We tend to become oblivious sometimes to things that are so close to us. So there's things that can be adapted from the secular world to help us understand Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada described that in one purport, how all fields of knowledge and science, if they are utilized in Krishna service, they actually become Hari Kirtan. So utilizing science or psychology can also help us to implement Krishna consciousness in a more deep way, and to help us realize something that we're actually so close to we can't see. So that's actually a very good question. I appreciate that one. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Surendra. You explained very nicely about these three modes of material nature. So the challenge which I face is, which I recently realized, is that in our daily life, we have activities. And the problem is that I see activities related to the devotional service, but then as a nature, general nature, I see activities not related to devotional service, and I consider them as a outside the devotional service. And that is probably maybe due to one of the, like going to the grocery store or doing some other work or office work or this, those other things. The intention comes immediately that, oh, this is not related to, and probably because of the modes of nature. How we can train the challenges or anything you face that we consider every activity of the day as a devotional service.
Yeah, I can give you one example of that. Again, in terms of book distribution, there was one Mataji once, she wrote Srila Prabhupada. She had some small children. And she said, well, is raising children, is that enough service, or should I do something more direct, like service in the temple, book distribution or something, or is looking after my children, is that enough? And Srila Prabhupada's reply was interesting. He said, in devotional service, if you are engaged under the direction of the Acharya, bona fide spiritual master, he said there's no direct and no indirect. He said, just like there's many wires in your house, they're connected to the powerhouse. So we could make a little experiment. Anyone here could go and stick their finger in any light socket and you were going to feel the energy of the powerhouse. So in the same way, if somehow we're connected with Krishna's service, and so this mother's talking about her children. Now, Prabhupada's not saying that you don't serve in the temple or you don't distribute books, but he's saying that even that service of rendering your, bringing your kids up is also an important service to Krishna, and it directly connects you to Krishna. It's not, Prabhupada said there's no such thing as direct or indirect. So as you're saying, you may be working, you may be, shopping, so many things that seem indirect, but those activities, your occupation is actually supporting your devotional service. And sometimes if we can see that, and I was actually experiencing that one time when I moved to Sarnagati. I had to accept an occupation because there wasn't a lot of choices in the area, which is not something maybe I would have chosen by choice, but by situation I accepted it. And I was feeling I felt it was like an impediment to my Krishna consciousness. But I kind of stepped back and from a different perspective, and I could see, according to my values, my real value was I wanted to do what I'm doing now, just try to facilitate devotees to have better marriages. And I realized that, well, by taking this occupation, I was getting some income, which was going to help me to pay for my house and retire as soon as I could, so I could do what I wanted to do. So I began to see that, well, that was actually facilitating what I wanted to do. It was facilitating my most important values. So I started to see it as something that was facilitating my value, not an impediment to my value. And actually, when I made that change in consciousness, it was quite miraculous. I actually began to enjoy what I was doing. And I began to develop some close relationships with the people I was working with, very good friendships. And it seems counterintuitive. The gentleman I was working for, I told him, look, I'm only going to work 3 days a week because I was doing what I wanted to really do was this Grihastha programs. And he said, okay, so we arranged something. I was job sharing with someone. It turned out to be the perfect arrangement for me because when I wanted to travel to different countries, my coworker would take over my hours. And counterintuitive as it was, when I told my boss I was going to just work 3 days a week, he actually gave me a raise. And so sometimes changing our consciousness in terms of our values can transform the situation. So your occupation is an important part of your service. And it's important to see that, because sometimes householders think that this part of my life is devotional service and this part of my life is not. It's disconnected. But it's important to see there is a connection, that Krishna says all you do. So what does that exclude? All doesn't exclude anything. Somebody asked once, well, what if someone's drinking? I mean, you said all. And Prabhupada actually replied to that once. He said, even the alcoholic, if he could think, well, he's drinking alcohol to get drunk, but Prabhupada said, if he realized the taste of the water in that alcohol was Krishna, Prabhupada said he's going to become purified. So even your occupation, your shopping, everything you're doing, it's actually facilitating. So in the highest sense, everything's connected with Krishna. And ultimately, there's things that we might want to do in Krishna consciousness. And we all have those as important values. But sometimes, especially for grihastas, we have these very important responsibilities to raise families, which requires that, we have to work in the outside world. But that is facilitating that. And it's a very, very important service. And like sometimes there's this paradigm in our society that household life was a deep, dark well. And sometimes householders, when they have this consciousness that, well, the temple's my spiritual life and my family life is something different. When you're thinking it's something different, and those times in your life when there are difficulties, maybe you have small kids, they're sick, you're working, you have bills to pay, maybe stresses at work. If you think your spiritual life is different, if you think your temple life is different than the rest of your life, you may start to believe those kinds of negative paradigms that, well, maybe this is and you can lose enthusiasm, for your occupation or your other grihast activities. But those things are very important, and it's very important that we do those in the mode of goodness, and because that will help us to fully imbibe Krishna consciousness. Maybe I think we're just gone a little over, so we can take maybe one more question.
Prabhu, this is Nicole. Oh, sorry. I can.
You can go ahead.
Okay, I'll just be very quick. I used to live in Ottawa, and I used to go to the temple, of course. I moved to New Brunswick. My elderly mother she's 86 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, she doesn't want to live with me. She lives separate, but I have to drive her for groceries and getting her haircut, etc., all her appointments.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, but I'm, you know how it's, Prabhupada said we shouldn't associate, too much with people who could influence us in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
She eats beef, and drinks wine. Not, overly or something. I don't mean to say that, but she'll have the occasional glass of wine in the evening when I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, am I doing any, like, how would I say, something that's against me by helping her and associating with her? It's very hard on me. Let's put it that way.
Well, we all have a debt to our parents, and
Yeah.
for many of us, our parents are not devotees.
Yeah.
But still, we can appreciate that our parents, they brought us into this world, and our parents actually did a lot for us. And it is important that, especially in the latter part of their lives, we help them. And as you say, it can be difficult because most of our parents, maybe they don't become vegetarian. But at least if they respect that you're a devotee and they honor that and they don't interfere with that, still you can, facilitate them and try to assist them as possible. So that it's very important. We shouldn't neglect our parents. So you shouldn't feel guilty about rendering that service.
I'm adopted, so she
Okay.
didn't. We have nothing in common. I'm sorry to say, it's a very difficult situation. Putting me down, and I don't want to. It's difficult.
Okay, so she's not so favorably disposed towards Krishna consciousness or towards you.
Yeah, I guess both. She thinks I'm crazy, basically.
Even though she's not your birth parent,
yeah,
we still have some sense of duty to try to help them. And, again, we can see that, well, this is an opportunity from Krishna to help become a little patient. And the best case scenario, at least if they respect that you're helping them. And Prabhupada said, even if someone likes a Hare Krishna person for some reason, Prabhupada said that's to their eternal spiritual benefit. So she will benefit even if she's just appreciating the service you're rendering for her.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Okay.
So maybe Thank you very much. So maybe I'll end there. And it was nice. I've never
Thank you, Prabhuji.
visited Ottawa. So I'm hoping someday I'll be able to come in the third dimension and see the beautiful deities and all the devotees there. So thank you.
You should move. You should move to New Brunswick. There's nobody here. There's no temple. There's nothing. Yeah. I'm telling you, if I somehow, some way, if Krishna arranges that I get a lot of money, I'm opening a temple and having the people from Ottawa move here.
Okay. Well, may Krishna bless you that
Hare
happens.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe I'll turn it back over to our host.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, are you pressed for time?
I beg your pardon?
Are you pressed for time? Can you take actually one question which was posted before this lady?
Sure, I can take another one.
Yeah, there's a Kamal Loshan Prabhu has one question, please. He actually put it on the chat box.
I don't know if I can see the question. Can you read it to me?
Kamal Loshan Prabhu, can you read it?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Kamala Chandas here, my businesses. Thank you for the really nice class. And I'll try to read, it's easier for me to read a question. It's basically, I have a question related to one of the statements you mentioned about Mother Yashoda trying to tie Krishna, and always rope was two inches short. And those 2 inches represent our sincere endeavor, and the other is Krishna's mercy. And then also you mentioned how we as devotees, as practicing devotees, we have a choice in which mode of goodness, for example, we act, for example, in the chanting, etc. And how to understand properly this statement that we have a choice, but in the same time, it's those 2 fingers representing effort and Krishna's mercy. Does it depend also on Krishna's mercy, on which mode, in which mode we are going to act, or there is some? I mean, can you explain a little bit more about this? I hope you understand the question.
Krishna ultimately wants us to return to his abode and to come to his association, and we cannot attain the association of Krishna unless we attain a nature like Krishna's. And Prabhupada describes that in the 2nd verse in that chapter, how by understanding that chapter, we can attain a nature like Krishna's. And when we attain a nature like Krishna's, we can ultimately associate with Krishna. And that nature is Shuddha-sattva, or pure goodness. So the whole system of Varnashram is designed to bring individuals from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion, from passion to goodness, and from goodness to pure goodness, and from pure goodness back to Godhead. So Krishna actually, he does want that, but he gives us that independence that, you know, if we want to remain in the material modes, he will facilitate those desires for us. Krishna would rather us come to the mode of goodness and pure goodness, and our conditioning generally, from, as Prabhupada said, from time immemorial in this world is to be in the modes of passion and ignorance. So it can be difficult to break free from those modes. And the Prabhupada said, you know, it's not surprising that it's difficult because we have been conditioned for so long. But he said once in the Bhagavad Gita that it can take one moment to become fully Krishna conscious, or it can take, he said, many, many births. It just depends on our understanding these aspects and facts of Krishna consciousness and taking advantage of them. So the more we can read and not just read, but really try to understand and apply within our lives Krishna consciousness, the practical reality of how to come to that mode of goodness through understanding the philosophy of Krishna consciousness on year by year, month by month, week by week, day by day, hour by hour, and moment to moment basis. The more we can do that, the more we can focus and, you know, hone down to the finest detail of our Krishna consciousness, the more we can actually make advancement. And again, it's not easy, because as Prabhupada said, we have been conditioned, but if we continually make that sincere effort, Krishna will help. So does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you so very much for accepting our invitation and actually being with us, giving your association and very nice explanation. So
Thank
that
you.
I'm going to read the chapter 14 again with what you said. So
Okay,
maybe I'll get some additional realization because of your presentation today.
thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Again, sometime soon, perhaps in the new year.
Thank you. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, all the best.
Haribol.
Hari Bol. Dear devotees, we wanted to inform you that Gita Jayanti Day is coming up on the 25th. Last year we had started reciting all the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, many of you were there because there's no restriction at the time. Given the current restriction, so you can still participate online from the comfort of your home. So what we suggest that you please be available and have your Bhagavad Gita ready, and then we will send you further information exactly on that. And we would appreciate if you join us from home. A few of us will be here, so we will intend to do the same format, read through the chapters 1 to 9, have a short break, and then continue from 10 to 18. It may take between 2.5 to 3 hours. So participate as much as you can. It'll be nice if you can participate for the entire 700 verses. But you understand, if you're not able to, that's fine. Participate as much as you can. And also, I have a request. So, Mandalram Prabhu, are you there?
Hare Krishna, I'm here.
You want
Can you
to
hear me?
you want to tell us a little bit about how things are going with the Live to Give marathon? The short update.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, Hare Krishna devotees, my obeisances, all glories to Prabhupada. I just wanted to give everyone an update for this Live to Give marathon. Also, it's together with the Prabhupada marathon. And the devotees in Ottawa have set some new leaps and bounds goals where we're trying to get out 500 Bhagavad Gitas to different locations all over Ottawa. We've made some amazing headway in yoga studios, hospitals. We've been delivering cases of books. And just this week, we got connected with some hospices where they're very interested to have the devotees give books or deliver books to people who are nearing the end of their life, and then also expand the service into also giving support to those people, giving spiritual guidance. So we'll be having some meetings with them this upcoming week. And the biggest request is to, like Partha Prabhu was saying, that in Sankirtan, Prabhupada mentioned that we don't want to become too watered down, but what this Live to Give marathon really is doing is boiling the milk. It's making it thicker and sweeter. And when the devotees are all coming together and working as a unit and towards a goal, then this brings oxygen into the community in which devotees feel enthused. There's more service opportunities opening up. And we've already had 30 devotees come forward who are eagerly sponsoring boxes of books where we've been placing them all over Ottawa. So a humble request, if anyone has the means and ability that would also maybe like to sponsor, we're trying to reach our goal, smash it from last year. Last year we did 30, we're trying to go up to 50 this year. So a case of a box of books is $150 to be sponsored. And yeah, we'd love your support, and we'll be placing them all over Ottawa in many different venues. And then also, if you have the ability to come and help and maybe deliver or have any ideas, please feel free to contact me, Guru Prasad, or any of the devotees connected. We'd love to work together on this, and it's a lot of fun, very exciting, and it would please Prabhupada very much to see his books going all over the world. The goal is to get 2 million Bhagavad Gitas out worldwide, and in North America, we're trying to do 100,000. So we're on our way there, but just a little extra endeavor from the devotees, and we'll be able to clear the 2 million Bhagavad Gitas. So
That's right.
thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. So every case helps. Thank you for this update. We do hope that there'll be more participation. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Now we will have a kirtan for the next 10-15 minutes. Please stay on. Hari Bol.